Hello, welcome to day of reading through the Bible. I'm Toni Henderson-Mayers. I'll be your reader. I'm known as an actor, a director, producer, professor, but most important, I'm a child of God. And I'm also known as an entrepreneur too, as well. If you want to know more about me, join my Toni Henderson-Mayers YouTube channel. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe and ring the notification bell for that channel and this one so you'll know every time I upload a new video. So, you ready to read God's word? Let's go.
Okay, so we have First Samuel 28 through 31 and then Psalm 18. Yeah. All right, let's read. In those days of the in those days the Philistines gathered their forces to fight against Israel. Achish said to David, "You must understand that you and your men will accompany me in the army." David said, "Then you will see for yourself what your servant can do." Okay, you better talk that stuff, David. Achish replied, "Very well, I will make you my bodyguard for life." Hey, okay, he got a muscle. Saul and the medium at Endor. Now Samuel was dead, and all Israel had mourned for him and buried him in his own town of Ramah. Saul had expelled the mediums and spiritists from the land. The Philistines assembled and came and set up camp at Shunem, while Saul gathered all Israel and set up camp at Gilboa. When Saul saw the Philistine army, he was afraid. Terror filled his heart. He inquired of the Lord, but the Lord did not answer him by dreams or Urim or prophets. Saul then said to his attendants, "Find me a woman who is a medium, so I may go and inquire of her." Now, you know what? "There is one in Endor," they said. So Saul disguised himself, putting on other clothes, and at night he and two men went to the woman. "Consult a spirit for me," he said, "and bring up for me the one I name." But the woman said to him, "Surely you know what Saul has done. He has cut off the mediums and spiritists from the land. Why have you set a trap for my life to bring about my death?" Saul swore to her by the Lord, "As surely as the Lord lives, you will not be punished for this." Then the woman asked, "Whom shall I bring up for you?" "Bring up Samuel," he said. Then when the woman saw Samuel, she cried out at the top of her voice and said to Saul, "Why have you deceived me? You are Saul." The king said to her, "Don't be afraid. What do you see?" The woman said, "I see a ghostly figure coming up out of the earth." "What does he look like?" he asked. "An old man wearing a robe is coming up," she said. Then Saul knew it was Samuel, and he bowed down and prostrated himself with his face to the ground. Samuel said to Saul, "Why have you disturbed me by bringing me up?" Oh, that's right. Lord have mercy. Oh my gosh. We got this seance going on. Oh, Jesus. Okay, so let's repeat what he said. Samuel said to Saul, "Why have you disturbed me by bringing me up?" "I am in great distress," Saul said. "The Philistines are fighting against me, and God has departed from me. He no longer answers me, either by prophets or by dreams. So I have called on you to tell me what to do." Samuel said, "Why do you consult me, now that the Lord has departed from you and become your enemy? The Lord has done what he predicted through me. The Lord has torn the kingdom out of your hands and given it to one of your neighbors, to David, because you did not obey the Lord or carry out his fierce wrath against the Amalekites. The Lord has done this to you today." The Lord will deliver both Israel and you into the hands of the Philistines. And tomorrow you and your sons will be with me. Oh, child, you should have never, you should have never asked. The Lord will also give the army of Israel into the hands of the Philistines. Immediately, Saul fell full length on the ground. I would too, honey. Filled with fear because of Samuel's words. His strength was gone, for he had eaten nothing all that day and all that night. Honey, you might as well eat. If you ain't going to be here, you might as well eat, because you ain't going to be eating down there no more. Okay, when the women came to Saul and saw that he was greatly shaken, she said, "Look, your servant has obeyed you. I took my life into your hands and did what you told me to do. Now, please listen to your servant and let me give you some food so you may eat and have the strength to go your way." He refused and said, "I will not eat." But his men joined the woman in urging him, and he listened to them. He got up from the ground and sat on the couch. The woman had a fattened calf at the house, which she butchered at once. She took him some flour, kneaded it, and baked bread without yeast. Then she set it before Saul and his men, and they ate. That same night, they got up and left. Chapter 29. Achish sends David back to Ziklag. The Philistines gathered all their forces at Aphek, and Israel camped by the spring in Jezreel. As the Philistine rulers marched with their units of hundreds and thousands, David and his men were marching at the rear with Achish. The commanders of the Philistine asked, "What about these Hebrews?" Achish replied, "Is this not David, who was an officer of Saul, king of Israel? He has already been with me for over a year, and from the day he left Saul until now, I have found no fault with him." But the Philistine commanders were angry with Achish and said, "Send the man back, and that he may return to the place you assigned him. He must not go with us into battle, or he will turn against us during the fighting. How better could he regain his master's favor than by taking the heads of our own men? Isn't this the David they sang about in their dances?" Like they still remember that song. Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. So Achish called David and said to him, "As surely as the Lord lives, you have been reliable, and I would be pleased to have you serve with me in the army. From the day you came to me until today, I have found no fault in you. But the rulers don't approve of you. Now turn back and go in peace. Do nothing to displease the Philistine rulers." "But what have I done?" asked David. "What have you found against your servant from the day I came to you until now? Why can't I go and fight against the enemies of my lord the king?" Achish answered, "I know that you have been as pleasing in my eyes as an angel of God. Nevertheless, the Philistine commanders have said, 'He must not go up with us to into battle.' Now get up early, along with your master's servants who have come with you, and leave in the morning as soon as it is light. It is light." So David and his men got up early in the morning to go back into the land of the Philistines, and the Philistines went up to Jezreel. Chapter 30. David destroys the Amalekites. David and his men reached Ziklag on the third day. Now the Amalekites had raided the Negev and Ziklag. They had attacked Ziklag and burned it, and had taken captive the women and everyone else in it, both young and old. They killed none of them, but carried them off as they went on their way. When David and his men reached Ziklag, they found it destroyed by fire, and their wives and sons and daughters taken captive. So David and his men wept aloud until they had no strength left to weep. David's two wives had been captured, Abinoam of Jezreel and Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel. David was greatly distressed because the men were taking of stoning him. Each one was bitter in his spirit because of his sons and daughters, but David found strength in the Lord his God. Then David said to Abithar, the priest, the son of Ahimelech, bring me the ephod. Abithar brought it to him, and David inquired of the Lord, shall I pursue the raiding party? Will I overtake them? Pursue them, he answered. You will certainly overtake them and succeed in the rescue. David and the 600 men, with him came to the Besor Valley, where some stayed behind. 200 of them were too exhausted to cross the valley, but David and the other 400 continued the pursuit. They found an Egyptian in a field and brought them to David. They gave him water to drink and food to eat, part of a cake pressed, part of part of a cake of pressed figs, and 2 cakes of raisins. I'm hungry again. He ate and was revived, for he had not eaten any food or drunk any water for 3 days and 3 nights. David asked him, who do you belong to? Where do you come from? He said, I am an Egyptian, the slave of an Amalekite. My master abandoned me when I became ill 3 days ago. We raided the Negev of the Ketherites, some territory belonging to Judah, and the Negev of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag. David asked him, can you lead me down to this raiding party? He answered, swear to me before God that you will not kill me or hand me over to my master, and I will take you down to them. He led David down, and there they were scattered over the countryside, eating, drinking, and reveling because of the great amount of plunder they had taken from the land of the Philistines and from Judah. David fought them from dusk until evening of the next day, and none of them got away except 400 young men who rode off on camels and fled. David recovered everything the Amalekites had taken, including his 2 wives. Nothing was missing, young or old, boy or girl, plunder or anything else they had taken. David brought everything back. He took all the flocks and herds, and his men drove them ahead of the livestock, saying, this is David's plunder. Then David came to the 200 men who had been too exhausted to follow him and who were left behind at the Besor Valley. They came out to meet David and the men with him. As David and his men approached, he asked them how they were. But all the evil men and troublemakers among David's followers said, because they did not go out with us, we will not share with them the plunder we recovered. However, each man may take his wife and children and go. David replied, no, my brothers, you must not do that with what the Lord has given us. He has protected us and delivered into our hands the raiding party that came against us. Who will listen to what you say? The share of the man who stayed with the supplies is to be the same as that of who went down to battle. All will share alike. David made this a statute and ordinance for Israel from that day to this. Then David, let me see. Okay, I got one more. Then David, when David reached Ziklag, he sent some of the plunder to the elders of Judah who were with his friends, saying, here is a gift for you from the plunder of the Lord's enemies. David sent it to those who were in Bethel, Ramoth, Negev, and Jatir, to those in Aor, Shipmoth, Estimoa, and Rakal, to those in the towns of the Jezreelites and the Kenites, to those in Hormah, Bor, Ashan, Athak, and Hebron, and to those in all the other places where he and his men had roamed. Chapter 31. Saul takes his life. Now the Philistines fought against Israel. The Israelites fled before them and many fell dead on Mount Gilboa. The Philistines were in hot pursuit of Saul and his sons, and they killed his sons Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchishua. The fighting grew fierce around Saul, and when the archers overtook him, they wounded him critically. Saul said to his armor bearer, "Draw your sword and run through me, and run me through, or these uncircumcised fellows will come and run me through and abuse me." But his armor bearer was terrified and would not do it. So Saul took his own sword and fell on it. When the armor bearer saw that Saul was dead, he too fell on his sword and died with him. So Saul and his 3 sons and his armor bearer and all his men died together that same day. When the Israelites along the valley and those across the Jordan saw that the Israelite army had fled and that Saul and his sons had died, excuse me, they abandoned their towns and fled, and the Philistines came and occupied them. The next day, when the Philistines came to strip the dead, they found Saul and his 3 sons fallen on Mount Gilboa. They cut off his head, and stripped off his armor, and they sent messengers throughout the land to the Philistines to proclaim the news in the temple of their idols and among their people. They put his armor in the temple of the Ashtaroth and fastened his body to the wall of Beth Shan. When the people of Jabesh Gilead heard what the Philistines had done to Saul, all their valiant men marched through the night to Bethshan. They took down the bodies of Saul and his sons from the wall of Bethshan and went to Jabesh, where they burned them, Then they took their bones and buried them under a tamarack tree at Jabesh, and they fasted 7 days. So now we're going to Psalm 18 because we're reading in chronological order through the Bible, and this is what occurred next after this battle. Psalm 18. For the director of music of David, the servant of the Lord, he sang to the Lord the words of this song when the Lord delivered him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. He said, I love you, Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer. The Lord and my God, let me start this over. I love you, Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I called to the Lord who is worthy of praise, and I have been saved from my enemies. The cords of death entangle me, the torrents of destruction overwhelm me. The cords of the grave coiled around me, the snares of death confronted me. In my distress, I called to the Lord. I cried for my God for help. From his temple, he heard my voice. My cry came before him into his ears. The earth trembled and quaked, and the foundations of the mountains shook. They trembled because he was angry. Smoke rose from his nostrils, consuming fire came from his mouth. Burning coals blazed out of it. He parted the heavens and came down. Dark clouds were under his feet. He mounted the cherubim and flew. He soared on the wings of the wind. He made darkness his covering, his canopy around him, the dark rain clouds of the sky. Out of the brightness of his presence, clouds advanced with hailstones and bolts of lightning. The Lord thundered from heaven. The voice of the Most High resounded. He shot his arrows and scattered the enemy with great bolts of lightning. He routed them. The valleys of the sea were exposed, and the foundations of the earth laid bare. At your rebuke, Lord, at the blast of breath from your nostrils, He reached down from on high and took hold of me. He drew me out of deep waters. He rescued me from my powerful enemy, from my foes who were too strong for me. They confronted me in the day of my disaster, but the Lord was my support. He brought me out into a spacious place. He rescued me because he delighted in me. The Lord has dealt with me according to my righteousness. According to the cleanness of my hands, he has rewarded me. For I have kept the ways of the Lord. I am not guilty of turning from my God. All his laws are before me. I have not turned away from his decrees. I have been blameless before him and have kept myself from sin. The Lord has rewarded me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands in his sight. To the faithful, you show yourself faithful. To the blameless, you show yourself blameless. To the pure, you show yourself pure. But to the devious, you show yourself shrewd. You save the humble. You bring low those whose eyes are haughty. You, Lord, keep my lamp burning. My God turns my darkness into light. With your help, I can advance against the troop. With my God, I can scale a wall. As for God, his way is perfect. The Lord's word is flawless. He shields all who take refuge in him. For who is God besides the Lord? And who is the rock except our God? It is God who arms me with strength and keeps my way secure. He makes my feet like the feet of deer. He causes me to stand on the heights. He trains my hands for battle. My arms can bend and bow of bronze. You make your saving help my shield, and your right hand sustains me. Your help has made me great. You provide a broad path for my feet so that my ankles do not give way. I pursued my enemies and overtook them. I did not turn back till they were destroyed. I crushed them so that they could not rise. They fell beneath my feet. You armed me with strength for battle. You humbled my adversaries before me. You made my enemies turn their backs in flight, and I destroyed my foes. They cried for help, but there was no one to save them. To the Lord, but he did not answer. I beat them as fine as wind-blown dust. I trampled them like mud in the streets. You have delivered me from the attacks of the people. You have made me the head of nations. People I did not know now serve me. Foreigners cower before me. As soon as they hear of me, they obey me. They all lose heart. They come trembling from their strongholds. The Lord lives. Praise be to the rock. Exalted be God, my Savior. He is the Lord who avenges me, who subdues nations under me, who saves me from my enemies. You exalted me above my foes. From a violent man you rescued me. Therefore I will praise you, Lord, among the nations. I will sing the praises of your name. He gives his kings great victories. He shows unfailing love to his anointed, to David and to his descendants forever. That was our last chapter reading for today. May the Lord add a blessing to the reading of his word. Wow, full of battles and all kind of things going on. And what about that seance? Oh my goodness. Honey, I don't know. I think Saul was in such distress. Even though he had made some mistakes, a lot of mistakes in his life, he did have high regard for Samuel. He knew that Samuel was God's prophet and he needed to get a word because he couldn't get it from anybody else. But honey, mm, maybe we better be a little careful for asking God to give us a word because he got a little bit too much, didn't he? He he asked, Saul to find out if he should go up in battle and what was going to happen. And honey, he got an earful, didn't he? And I feel so terrible for the spiritist, right? She said, "You got me. You Saul." She knew enough to know that he was Saul, and you got me talking to a dead man. And oh my gosh, you got me pulling Samuel up. And Samuel like, "Why you pull me up out of here?" Samuel was chilling. He was laying in the cut, and you gonna pull him up out of heaven, honey, to say something to you. Wowzer. And he still had a word. He still had a word. That's some stuff to think about, isn't it? Oh, my nerves. Wow. And then you have a king of the Philistines. David goes back to the place where he killed Goliath. He goes back to Gath. But that king really respected David because David lived in such a way before him. He didn't find any fault in him. He didn't want to do evil to David. But we see that even when he didn't go into battle, it was a good thing he didn't, right? Because his wives, their children, all of the soldiers' wives and children had been taken away. Their place had been plundered. Just so action-packed of things that happened. It sounds like some of our lives, that so many things are going on. But what we see even in this psalm that was read last is that David relies on the Lord for everything. And then when he does it, he doesn't forget to thank him. Mm, You better thank the Lord for what he has done for you. I'm not a big writer like journals and all that, but some of the ones that I did keep, I see that you could see how the Lord delivers or does things for you. And sometimes you would forget if you didn't have it in writing, or if you're not. I'm more of an orator, and I'm an auditory learner. So I tend to like to repeat. That's why I like testifying services, not testifying, but testifying services, because it's a way to constantly talk about what God has done. And we never want to forget to give him thanks. Well, thank you for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Ring that notification bell so you know every time I upload a new video. Know that the word of God is a lamp unto our feet. It is a light unto our path. We will hide God's word in our hearts that we may not sin against God. Take care. Bye-bye.
Hey there, thank you so much for checking out my video, and I want you to check out my website at ToniHenderson-Mayers.com. You can find out about me in film and stage. You can also find out about the wise courtship philosophy and everything that I do, speaking across the country, and the book that I've written. And of course, you can go on to my online store where you can learn a lot of information about business, get coaching sessions, online courses, and so much more. Not only that, I have an Etsy store, which the website of all of these things are in my description. So make sure you go to my Etsy shop, which is called Faith, Hope, and Love Center. Make sure you go to that so you can get t-shirts, and I'm adding things every day, t-shirts, mugs, masks, all types of things, into the link that's going to take you to all of the books that we're using pretty much in our Read Through the Bible series. So here are the journals. This reflection journal is so that you can write and take notes. This one has a lot of study information and will help you keep organized as you're studying the Bible. This is the Bible that I read from, the NIV Study Bible. Of course, Wise Courtship is here, and some of the other books that I wrote, Yes, God is Real, and also I Rise, Stories of Triumph. It's just a great encouragement tool. So walk on over to the stores and give us some support. I think you're going to be blessed by the products. Take care.